Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and today we are going to talk about After Dark by Haruki Murakami. This was published in 2007, the English translation by J. Rubin. It was published in Japan in 2004. I have read a lot of Murakami, something like a dozen of his books, and there are a lot of themes that if you're reading tons of Murakami, you see over and over again, and something I really admire about him is he can write sort of the same story 20 different times, and it's always interesting. And that's really inspiring to me as a writer because I'm always afraid to explore the same themes over and over because what if the reader gets bored? What if it sounds like I'm just telling the same story? But he manages to do it. And he says this interesting thing in the introduction. He says, I generally write a lengthy novel followed by a shorter novel and then followed by short stories. And it's true, he has these massive books and then short ones like this, and then a collection of short stories. I love his short story collections, but that's a tale for another day. I have a bunch of videos about all of his books that I've read. Let's read the back here first. In After Dark, a gripping novel of late-night encounters, Murakami's trademark humor and psychological insight are distilled with an extraordinary harmonious mastery. 19-year-old Mari is waiting out the night in an anonymous Denny's when she meets a young man who insists he knows her older sister, thus setting her on an odyssey through the sleeping city. In the space of a single night, the lives of a diverse cast of Tokyo residents, models, prostitutes, mobsters, and musicians, collide in a world suspended between fantasy and reality. Utterly enchanting and infused with surrealism, After Dark is a thrilling account of the magical hours separating midnight from dawn. So, if you look at all of his books as a whole, you're going to see some themes like loneliness, self-discovery, and identity, the subconscious, being separated from who we really are. You see that a lot in here. And you're going to see jazz, and you're going to see cats. And he often writes magical realism. And as you know, if you've been watching my videos, I'm not a big fan of magical realism. I really struggle with it. I think when things happen that aren't realistic in a story that is otherwise realistic, I'm just wondering, like, is that a plot device that you're using because it wasn't interesting enough without it? And, how are we going to get this person from A to B unless they sprout wings and fly? I'm usually just really not a fan of it. But I always get down with it when he writes it. So he has this very particular style that you will recognize if you've read him before. That like seems kind of simple on the surface, but then when you really dig into it and you look at all the symbolism that is in his books, it is a lot to dig through. So to me, this book is mostly about liminal spaces, liminal time, if you can call it that, the time between sunset and sunrise, and then being in that liminal space allows human connection. So the book is a lot about connecting with people that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to connect with and talk to if we hadn't had this liminal space pushing us together with nothing else really going on. It's a space where we can be free to explore other ways of thinking and other parts of ourselves that maybe we've been hiding from and hiding from other people. So we have this liminal space of night that provides feels like it's like a safe space for a lot of these characters to talk to each other. They keep saying, oh, I've never said something like, or I've never told somebody this before, but I feel like I can tell you now. There's something about nighttime when most of the world is sleeping that just allows us to open up, and he does a really great job of exploring that in here. Because we have all these characters that are unwilling to talk openly, but throughout the book they begin to open up to each other and feel comfortable. And then I thought about the parts where he's talking about this like omniscient camera that represents us as a viewer. It's like we are viewers of the world's struggles, of each other's struggles and hardships, but we don't get involved. We can see into Mari's sister, Ari's room, and we can see that she's going through something bad. but we're just viewing it. And it makes me think of how many people are just on their phones watching the world fall apart through a screen, and how most of us don't don't do anything. And even not just the world at large, but if we see our friends struggling, like our friends post something saying they're not doing well, so many people won't reach out. They will just see it on the screen and keep on scrolling. And it's as if we're not seeing that this is a real person, a real human, that needs connection right now and needs reassurance. And it feels like that's what a lot of this book is about, that we are being shown this really disconnected world, and how with the liminal space of night we can come together and connect with each other. And then we have the character of Mari, who is the perfect main character, the perfect center of this story, because she doesn't conform to these capitalistic, voyeuristic, misogynistic themes in the world that Murakami is writing about. Like you have Shirakawa, the really bad guy that beats up the woman. He is part of this like corporation, this capitalist system, and really represents that. And then we are the voyeurs with the camera watching everything with a bird's eye view. And then we meet all these strong women that are, some of them being hurt by men, and we have that character of Shirakawa, who is probably respected in his job, but cheats on his wife and beats up sex workers. And so we have Mari, who just goes out into the world at night to get away, and she represents everything that is the opposite of these themes that we're seeing. So she goes against the grain. She chooses to speak Chinese. So she is taking the constructs that she sees in Japanese society, traditional Japanese society, and she is saying, I reject that, and I'm going to choose my own path. But she's not even really fully convinced that she is doing that. And what we see throughout the book is her learning how to connect with herself, and at times it's scary for her, and she feels dissociated. And at times we see her come into her own and also be able to connect with others, such as her sister, and all the other characters that we meet in the book. So she is a really good anchor point in this book. That was a lot of talking. Okay, I am going to leave that for the intro, and then we'll come back and talk about some quotes. I have to go to a museum right now. It'll probably be darker when I get back. See you soon. Okay, I'm back. Now we're going to look at some quotes in the book and talk about what they might mean, why they were significant to me. Even at a time like this, the street is bright enough and filled with people coming and going. People with places to go and people with no place to go. People with a purpose and people with no purpose. People trying to hold time back, and people trying to urge it forward. This makes me think of a theme in the book, which is, can anybody find their place? Does anybody really know what their place is? Because it seems that Mari is definitely considering that throughout the book, and then you have certain places. I know I will keep going on about liminal spaces, but you have certain places like the Denny's. That Denny's at, past midnight, that's kind of a liminal space, and it's a place where you kind of look around and think, who belongs here? What is each person's purpose in being here? Is it because they didn't belong anywhere else at this time of night, and so they ended up here? And then you have the Love Hotel, which is another one of those places where a lot of people wouldn't find themselves there, and it makes you think, like, what makes you end up here? And everybody has their own different story for why they're in these places. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here. That's literally what this is. Okay, some more about identity. I wonder how it turns out that we all lead such different lives. Take you and your sister, for example. You're born to the same parents, you grow up in the same household, you're both girls. How do you end up with such wildly different personalities? At what point do you, like, go your separate ways? This is something that has always fascinated me, and I guess because I have a sister and we're completely different. And I remember way back in college, I wrote an essay on King Lear and how the three sisters in King Lear are so different, or at least Cordelia is so different from the others, and how could that be? And I talked about nature versus nurture. So it's an interesting point in this book, this idea of identity and how do we form our own identity, how much is it influenced from other people, how much of it is intrinsic. Just some more to think about. Consciousness or its absence is of no concern as long as the functions for sustaining life are maintained. Aries' pulse and respiration continue at the lowest possible level. Her existence seems to have been placed upon the narrow threshold that separates the organic from the inorganic, secretly and with great care. So Aries' state of being asleep for 2 months, pretty much, just sort of being conscious enough to, like, get some meals down and then go back to sleep. And this idea of her, like, it doesn't matter what's going on with her consciousness as long as she's sustaining her life, as long as her, like, organs are still working. And that makes me think of, like, just being part of the system. Just being part of the system is enough, because corporations, they don't care if you're happy as long as you're breathing. As long as you're breathing and consuming and buying everything, what do they care what's going on in your head? And so I think that's symbolic of that here, like her state of being asleep, and how we know that she feels trapped and she feels like she is not a person anymore and she's just this thing that you look at. There's a lot of interesting stuff to unpack there with how they keep calling her so beautiful and like Snow White and like Sleeping Beauty. And also those are the two princesses you think of when you think of who like fell into a deep sleep and had to be woken up, and who, like, while they were lying there, it was talked about how they just look so perfect and beautiful. And what does that say about us, that we see a woman who is seemingly so depressed or distraught, or something has gone wrong to the point where she is almost comatose, but we're just calling her beautiful. We're talking about how exquisite she looks when she's asleep. I mean, how sick is that? Okay. It's true, though. Time moves in its own special way in the middle of the night. So, like I said, nighttime, this time when the city is asleep, it gives us a chance to open up more possibilities that we didn't have during the day. So there's this interesting bit when Takahashi talks about how he was going to be a lawyer and was doing these trials, and then he started like seeing the system for what it really was. As I sat in court, though, and listened to the testimonies of the witnesses and the speeches of the prosecutors and the arguments of the defense attorneys and the statements of the defendants, I became a lot less sure of myself. In other words, I started seeing it like this: that there really was no such thing as a wall separating their world from mine, or if there was such a wall, it was probably a flimsy one made of papier-mâché. The second I leaned on it, I'd probably fall right through and end up on the other side. Or maybe it's that the other side has already managed to sneak its way inside of us, and we just haven't noticed. So we're more alike than we are different, and that's another theme in this book with human connection. The characters find out that they're able to talk to people that they never would have met usually. I mean, the people that work at this love hotel, Mari really talks to them, and she says like she feels such a, I guess, kinship for the sex worker because she's her age and she just sees herself in her. And Yeah, so he's saying, like, he sees people on trial being judged for things, and it could just as easily be him, and there's this very thin veil that separates us from other people. It's really very insubstantial. And yet we like to use the class system and ways of organizing ourselves and categorizing other people so that we know, oh, you go over there and we go over here, and we don't mix. I just have to make a note about the cats in all of Murakami's books. He always talks about cats, and I appreciate that so much. As a cat mom, I love all the talk about cats. And cats, of course, are always literary symbols. They can be symbols of mystery, they can be symbols of comfort, femininity, um, so many things. Cats just represent so much. I just like this line that says, Takahashi throws the rest of his fish cake to another cat that is edging toward him. The cat sniffs it cautiously and then devours it excitedly. I love how he talks about cats. And he really does love them in real life. Okay, Takahashi says, but even though I was with my father again, I never felt really secure deep down. I don't know how to put it exactly, but things were never really settled inside me. I always had this feeling like, I don't know, like somebody was putting something over on me, like my real father had disappeared forever, and to fill the gap, some other guy was sent to me in his shape. So this has me thinking again about like questioning reality and questioning identity. What is real? And because there's so much that is surreal in this book, you can't help but think about it. Sorry, I'm distracted by my own cat, who is being adorable right now at this moment. I keep having the same dream. I'm 7 years old and an orphan again, all alone with no adults around to take care of me. It's evening and the light is fading and night is pressing in. It's always the same. In the dream, I always go back to being 7 years old. Software like that, you can't exchange once it's contaminated. Love that way of looking at it, because I've been struggling to find the words to explain this to people when I'm in like my worst depressive states. I've been trying to explain it feels like things have gotten so bad that even if like the situation improves, I can never fully wipe away everything, like all this mess from all the trauma I've lived through. I can't get rid of it and start over, so there's just no point in continuing. And the way that he puts it, it's like software that you can't exchange once it's contaminated. That is such a great way to say it. And it's also, it makes you think like these characters all need to make space to allow change in their lives. And so we see that with Takahashi, what he says here, and then we have it with Mari, with her sister. And then we don't know what, who's the one that is running from something. One of the women who works at the place, is it Kuroji? I think so. Like, she's got this secret thing that she's running from, and she is very fatalistic. We'll see that in a moment. Thought versus action. What am I talking about? Is action merely the incidental product of thought, or is thought the consequential product of action? That, my brain is like, I don't even know if I have anything to say about that. I just thought I should bring it up so that you could interpret it yourself. That's how lazy I'm going to be right now. And then we'll take a look at this fatalistic mindset. When Kuroji is talking to Mari, let me tell you something, Mari. The ground we stand on looks solid enough, but if something happens, it can drop right out from under you. And once that happens, you've had it. Things will never be the same. All you can do is go on living alone down there in the darkness. So I don't think that's like the moral of the book or what we should be aspiring to. I think that is the fatalistic mindset of like the software thing. Like it's gone too far, things have gotten too bad, and we can't go back. But is that really true? I certainly hope not. So Mari's still talking to Kuroji, and she says, I do feel that I've managed to make something I could call my own world over time, little by little, and when I'm inside it, to some extent, I feel kind of relieved, but the very fact that I had to make such a world probably means that I'm a weak person, that I bruise easily, don't you think? And in the eyes of society at large, that world of mine is a puny little thing. It's like a cardboard house. A puff of wind might carry it off somewhere. So we have the paper mache barrier that we talked about before, and now we have this cardboard house that could be knocked over by a puff of wind. So it's like in this book, we're seeing how everything's very tenuous. Everything can be deconstructed like that. Identity and sense of place, like belonging, this can all blow with the wind. And I'm not sure what I'm trying to say about that, but in this passage we see that Mari's not really giving herself credit for rebelling, which, as we talked about before, she's doing that because she's rejecting traditional Japanese society and like a lot of the things that she's learned in the way that she's been raised, and she's going against it by creating this world of her own. But she sees it as being weak because she's unable to function in the real world, the world that capitalism and the man have created. And it's sad that she sees what she's doing, her rebelling, as a weakness. And you hope, like, toward the end of the book, she's starting to see that maybe that's not the case. This is a weird part. This is Kuroji. You know what I think? That people's memories are maybe the fuel they burn to stay alive. Whether those memories have any actual importance or not, it doesn't matter as far as the maintenance of life is concerned. They're all just fuel. Advertising fillers in the newspaper, philosophy books, dirty pictures in a magazine, a bundle of 10,000 yen bills. When you feed them to the fire, they're all just paper. The fire isn't thinking, oh, this is Kant, or oh, this is the Yomiuri evening edition, or nice tits while it burns. To the fire, they're nothing but scraps of paper. It's the exact same thing. Important memories, not so important memories. Totally useless memories, there's no distinction. They're all just fuel. I was kind of like struggling to think, what exactly does this mean? Does this mean that the past fuels us no matter what the memories of the past are? Like, even if they're useless, that doesn't seem like a good thing. It seems like we're taking, like we can be taking what we've learned in traumatic moments and carrying that into the future with us in a way that is not very healthy. So I guess it's true, yes, all memories do serve as fuel. We just hope that the good ones, like, they will fuel us the most. Like if we look in our past at times that we've succeeded and what did we do to get there? What did we do in that moment that made us happy? Can we replicate that? That is better than carrying forward, like holding on to memories of everything awful that's happened to us and then acting in our present out of fear and out of self-preservation in a way that isn't good for us. You know what I mean? I hope so. I really hope you do, because it's been a long day. I was at the museum for a poetry thing with my community poetry group, and I am tired and I'm hungry. Okay, more liminal space stuff. Everything finally unfolded in a place resembling a deep, inaccessible fissure. Such places open secret entries into darkness in the interval between midnight and the time the sky grows light. None of our principles have any effect there. No one can predict when or where such abysses will swallow people, or when or where they will spit them out. So it just kind of sums up the book. Like, we have this whole time period where life and the world and reality, they just don't move in the same way. So we have the chance to change things during that time. Okay, there's a lot of water symbolism throughout this book. The ocean, the fish tank, creatures of the deep, and this feeling of being trapped that Eri has when she goes through the television screen to the other side. She feels like she's trapped at the fish tank. And there's this bit here that says, the new day is almost here, but the old one is still dragging its heavy skirts. Just as ocean water and river water struggle against each other at a river mouth, the old time and the new time clash and blend. Takahashi is unable to tell for sure which side, which world contains his center of gravity. Ooh, so we see once again like the two worlds, the two parts of our identity being blurred, like the line between is blurred. Okay, we're almost done. So Mari says, I'm tired and I can't get my head straight and my voice doesn't sound like my voice to me. So here we have a very clear image of dissociation that she's feeling when I think she's confronted with too much reality at once. And she says like she hasn't really told anybody about this whole thing with her sister sleeping for 2 months and this memory she has in the elevator with her sister during the earthquake. And it's just a lot at once, and she's thinking about why her sister's like that and what can she do to change it, and has she just been doing nothing for too long. And you get those moments, I get those moments, where you've just said so much that you've been keeping inside and suddenly your voice doesn't sound like you anymore, you don't recognize it, and it's very scary, that feeling. It's a vulnerable feeling, but it's a very disconnected feeling. So again, throughout the book, all of this disconnect where we're connecting with other humans, but we're kind of unable to really connect to ourselves. But if we talk to the other humans enough, we'll get there. And I think that's really an important point, that by talking to other people and making connections with others, that is kind of the best way for us to understand ourselves. Because if we don't ever voice anything that's going on in our heads and we keep it all in here, it's not healthy. We can't like get the words out and let them hit the air and like make sense in a different way and maybe hear them repeated back to us through like filtered through another person's point of view, which can show us maybe how warped our thinking has been. Is this making sense? I am getting a headache. 2 more. Takahashi swings his trombone case from his right shoulder to his left. Then he says, it's not as if our lives are divided simply into light and dark. There's a shadowy middle ground. Recognizing and understanding the shadows is what a healthy intelligence does. And to acquire a healthy intelligence takes a certain amount of time and effort. I don't think you have a particularly dark character. So I like that bit about this idea of duality. So Mari is not just a dark character. She's not just like morbid and weird. She's not just the, what did she call herself? Like shepherdess sister of the beautiful Princess Snow White. We all, like Walt Whitman said, contain multitudes, and that is something that I think he does a good job of getting across here in a very nuanced way. Murakami just has this incredible style, and I don't know if it has to do with the translation. I deeply wish that I could read Japanese so that I could understand the original. But what comes across in the translation is this feeling of unease. I always feel like a little bit worried when I'm reading his books, and I love that. I love that feeling of like something bad is going on here, and I'm uncomfortable, and I don't know why. But I also feel like I'm seeing something in a way I haven't seen it before. It's just really beautifully done. Okay, last one. This is the last paragraph. Unimpeded by other schemes, this hint of things to come takes time to expand in the new morning light, and we attempt to watch it unobtrusively with deep concentration. The night has begun to open up at last. There will be time until the next darkness arrives. So I see this as like a rebirth, like when the sun rises, there's this rebirth after gaining all this new knowledge. So it's sort of a renaissance, if you will, which literally means rebirth. Now that we've been through the long nighttime and traveled to these different places and these different places within ourselves, we can see more and choose to do things a little bit differently this time when the sun rises. And I think it's kind of a hopeful ending when Mari gets into the bed with her sister and holds her, and it seems like perhaps her sister's going to wake up. It really is a beautiful symbol, this deep sleep that she's in. And while I could personally do without the going through the television and the faceless man thing, I don't really need that magical realism part of it, but just her having this thing where she sleeps for 2 months, that's enough for me as a symbol. And I think in such a short book. Like, there's just so much to dig into, and I liked it a lot. So I think that's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to make some dinner, and I will see you all next time. Until then, happy reading. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say, and I truly can't remember, so